The HasLab exclusive GI Joe classified Dragonfly has landed, and it's packed with incredible detail, firepower, and action features. In part 1 of my 2-part review, I take a deep dive into this massive attack helicopter itself, showcasing everything from its design and articulation to its working lights, illuminated cockpit control panels, and weapon accessories. How does the Dragonfly scale with other GI Joe classified vehicles? I compare it to the HasLab Cobra HISS Tank, GI Joe VAMP, and more. Plus, I showcase epic display ideas and high-energy action shots featuring GI Joe and Cobra forces. Don't forget to come back for part 2 where I'll take a look at the 4 exclusive figures that come with the Dragonfly. Let's go! Here we are, finally, the HasLab GI Joe classified Dragonfly in hand. It took a while from the initial backing period, but it made it, and boy was it worth the wait. This is the second HasLab vehicle released today with the Cobra Rattler the next in line, and these vehicles just keep getting better and better. I can't emphasize enough how impressive this thing is, from its design and size to all the accessories and figures it comes with. We're going to look at it all, starting this episode 46 with the Dragonfly itself. Whether you're here to check it out for fun, you're considering getting it on the secondary market, or even hoping to get a mainline version of it one day if ever released, which by the way I heard maybe something Hasbro does, this review will cover it all. And for those of you who are new here, we'd love it if you stuck around and liked this episode and subscribe so we can continue growing this awesome collector community we have going on here. So with that, let's take to the air with the HasLab GI Joe classified Dragonfly. I actually never had the original 1/18 scaled version of the Dragonfly, but man did I want it. I unfortunately got into GI Joe a bit late and missed the boat on most of the original vehicles, but let me tell you, this thing here makes up for it all. In my wildest dreams, I never thought we'd get a classified scaled vehicle of this size, let alone the HISS Tank, but somehow Hasbro pulled it off. You really do have to hold this helicopter in your hands to really understand the scope of it all, but I promise you I'll try my very best to convey that feeling to you in this spotlight. Everything from the design and detailing to the accessories is meticulously crafted to create a toy that looks so realistic. It's hard not to be fooled if you just had images to go off of. I truly love everything about this toy, and that says a lot since I tend to lean to the Cobra side when it comes to vehicles. The paint applications, the size, the missiles, and weapons upgrades, it all comes together so well from any angle, though I'm still trying to figure out why the back wings are fluorescent orange. Even then, I kinda dig it with a splash of color. Since the first section of the review is here to give you a 360 review, let's jump right into it, starting with a closer look at the side of the Dragonfly, which contains tons of details and highlights a great paint job and color created for this project, with a few darker highlights to give it some contrast. A close-up reveals all the great embedded decals applied to the Copter, including the updated Joe star symbol, and a bunch of realistic warnings that you would typically see on this type of military helicopter. As we move to the front, we have even more decals and that very cool Dragonfly symbol that appears throughout the vehicle. You also have Wild Bill's name, codename, and rank etched near the cockpit, with those rivets adding a perfect touch of realism. This panel on each side opens up to reveal the feeding mechanism for the side-mounted grenade launcher, which is surprisingly exquisitely detailed as well. 2 of the many weapons on this chopper, the previously mentioned M34 grenade launcher, as well as the side view of the Dragon Breath rotary nose cannon. And one of my favorite parts of this vehicle, one of 2 strikingly white creeper missiles which are mounted on each side of the Dragonfly, as well as side view of one of the 2 unguided rocket launchers. Another fun bit of detailing is the engine bay access door, which also opens up to reveal the 2-tone thruster engine, which is totally great for play and display. You've got this really nice rotor mechanism, as well as the stealth enhanced rotor blades, which as we saw earlier have the accurate military white stripes on the edges. This small light, while a nice bit of design, doesn't light up as some of the other parts do. As we head towards the back of the Dragonfly, we have the full GI Joe logo and the specific Dragonfly XH-1 numbering of the original, and more fantastic detailing with the rivets and molding. Finally, we get to the end with that same Dragonfly logo on the back V-tail wings, which there are 2 of, and which can each fold down from vertical to horizontal to give it that iconic Dragonfly look, or for however you like to display it, with a little bonus, in that the coaxial turbine covering can be removed to reveal what I believe is a Notar system contained within and replicates the original look of the Dragonfly. I actually prefer to leave it off in order to give me a slight bit more space for my display of the Dragonfly on my shelf. This is indeed a very sleek copter, kind of reminds me of the helicopter from the 80s series Airwolf from this angle. The rotary nose cannon is similar to the original, though missing the extra laser cannon that was also included on the 118 version. As we'll see later, this cannon rotates in all directions. As for some of the features and weapons, we have the front view of the rocket launchers with the unguided rockets locked in place with a beautiful silver paint job, as well as the front view of the black-tipped creeper missile and a working hoist with rescue hook, just like the original had, though I believe the original had it coming from underneath the body. The other side has the same setup in this image, though this time including on the left side the laser-guided cannon pod with some nicely detailed heat wear and tear, which is based off of the original design but in a slightly different configuration. A quick view of the rotor body paneling from the top, and the air intake to really drive home the impressive amount of detailing on this vehicle. Now, since the other side of the helicopter is essentially the same, I'm simply going to highlight some of the similarities and differences I picked up on with the original, starting with the loss of the original Dragonfly icon and addition of the newer symbol placed a bit further back. The placement of the M34 grenade launcher is accurate to the original, though we are also missing the reference to Sergeant W.C. Colbert, who I believe is the original sculptor's name, with Wild Bill's nickname being added to his full name and being moved to the correct pilot position to the back of the cockpit. The side panel again opens up to reveal the grenade feeding system and mechanism, a feature missing on the original. I this time included the 4 Jester missiles in place of the rocket launcher, which are on its own rack with each missile being individually removable. While the original did have weapons mounted on these wings, they were completely different, having 2 regular green looking Scorpion missiles and 1 Dragonfire missile mounted under each wing. Both have these side mounted thrusters, though a bit differently designed, and decals that are basically unique to each model. In this case, both the HasLab Dragonfly and the original 1/18 scale Dragonfly have panels here that can be removed to reveal the thruster engines, though the classified helicopter is missing the original's fun little rotating blade mechanism, which I'm sure was tons of fun to play with back in the day as a kid. The original had some different numbering here and a United States sticker instead of the XH-1 number and GI Joe logo, but otherwise generally had the same look with green stabilizers instead of this orange. Great Dragonfly looking design from the back that really lends to its name, highlighting the back wings, which like I said earlier can be placed in this configuration, the opposite configuration, similar to the original toy, or in an up or down configuration. Nice smooth lines here and more modern looking thrusters as compared to the original Dragonfly, which also had 4 instead of 2. So here's the entire set of rockets and missiles that the HasLab Dragonfly comes with, and wow, do they look cool spread out like this. You have your 2 Creeper missiles in white, your 2 rocket launchers, and 8 Jester missiles, as well as the already mounted laser-guided cannon pod. The Creeper missiles attached to the helicopter by these 2 skids that then slot into the Dragonfly itself. I also included the counter-rotation coaxial covering that can be placed on the tail of the Dragonfly. As you can see here, attaching the missiles is quite intuitive, with the holes being slightly different sizes so that you know you're putting them on in the right direction. Added bonus accessories are these plumes of smoke and fire, which can be added to the copter in a myriad of ways. I'm not even joking. There are so many ways you can configure your Dragonfly using just these 6 effects. This smaller trail effect is specifically made for use with the Creeper and Jester missiles, giving them that just about to launch look, which we've seen before with other classified vehicles. But you also get the huge launch effects that go in between the missile and the skid, so that you can attach it to where the Creepers would normally go and instead have the Creepers attached to the front, giving it this amazing effect of the missile already in flight passing the cockpit of the Dragonfly. When you begin adding in the effects to some of the other missiles, you start getting an idea of what I mean when I said there are tons of ways to display your Dragonfly. Here I added that first effect to one of the 4 Jester missiles to give it a similar launch feel. But there's more. By using the third effect, you can create both a firing effect for the cannon pod and a launch effect for the rocket launcher, which clearly gives the copter a more dynamic attack look, along with the smaller launcher effect for the Creeper missile. When you add this all together, you get quite the aerial view of the Dragonfly and all of its firepower to take on some Cobra HISS tanks and stingers. And there's even more you can do. You can take those smaller firing effects and add them to each of the front mounted grenade launchers. I really dig this look with the front mounted weapons firing in this configuration. Just makes the Dragonfly look so aggressive and dangerous. Once you start playing around with all the different configurations, you can really get a nice look for your display. For example, in my display, one side of the Dragonfly is closer to the wall, so placing all the effects on the other side facing the room gives it this incredible look. And since this is a HasLab, you do get some great lighting effects, starting with these 2 front-facing spotlights. Though what I really want to show you here are the different ways you can configure the weapons by interchanging the rocket launchers with the Jester missiles. Now that's an assault copter. We're finally onto the cockpit itself, which is so detailed I needed to keep a whole separate section for the review alone. Side note, this side pilot door and the gunner door on the other side are finicky and a little tough to open. I managed to get this one open with only a little strain on the hinges, so I'd be careful. Thankfully, the entire canopy opens up just like the original to reveal the incredible looking cockpit, which seats 2 classified figures quite comfortably. I mean, this is just fantastic, especially when you put the gunner pilot in the front, all decked out in his gear, in this case using Night Force Ripcord that came with a Dragonfly, as I think he looks the best here. The seats, and in fact the entire cockpit, is, as I mentioned, highly detailed and realistic. You have some nice molding, but also the 2-piece seatbelt, which we've come to see in the classified vehicles, which tap together once the figure is in place. You can see the control stick from this angle, as well as the extremely detailed flight controls, which light up and stay on for quite a bit of time. The whole thing is just perfection, especially in a part of the vehicle which they could have skimped on. The front gunner seat also has similar details. Knowing how big the standard male classified figures can be, especially when one is decked out in some heavy gear like Ripcord, there's actually quite a bit of room for not 1 but 2 classified figures. While I'm not going to get into the figures themselves in this part 1, I have to say, man, Wild Bill looks so cool here. Lit up, these controls and displays look as real as an actual helicopters. I mean, they went all in here with each of the pilots and gunners' displays being different. In reality, I'd say the color is a bit more green than what came out in this photo, but you get the idea. If you have the time, pause here and just take a look at all the detail included. It's quite impressive. Since we tend to display the Dragonfly with our entire collection of classified in the basement, you can't beat turning off the room lights while turning on the lights of the Copter and leaving it on while watching the GI Joe movie with the kids. What I love is that the designers really put a lot of thought into this HasLab release. Since this is a Copter and a lot of people got this to display, a stand was a must, and the designers came through not only with a stand, but with a clever design as well, using a plastic design to both be strong enough to hold up the helicopter, but also clear enough so that it gives the impression of it actually flying. You even get 2 large stickers that you can add to the base of the display. We opted for the traditional one using the original sticker from the 1/18 scaled version. Just gives it that bit of extra touch to make the display stand out. I think for what it's meant to be used for, it looks great. This is exactly the way we display it at our place. But there are definitely different ways to position it depending on the look you're going for, especially when you add in the lights. However, as you can see, due to the design of the stand, you can also have the Copter facing upwards rather than the other configuration I just showed aiming downwards. Displaying this Copter is really up to your heart's desire with all of the different possibilities. And if you want to take it a step further, there are lots and lots of ways you can design your version of the Dragonfly using the 2 pages of stickers this comes with. The first page has the other base sticker you can use, but also some smaller versions with either a skeletal Wild Bill riding a Dragonfly who itself is riding a missile, or just one with the bug-eyed Dragonfly on the missile. You also get the classic stickers that are based off of the sticker that appears with the original 1/18 Dragonfly. The second page has even more stickers. We haven't decided yet whether we want to place these on, since I'm not sure how well this may look long term as it ages, but we may ultimately cave and try some out. Out of these, I kinda like the playing card ones and the Wild Bill Yeehaw Champion logos, so we may at least try one of these and see how they hold up for a start. Which would you guys choose? Or do you prefer the more classic straightforward version? Let me know in the comment section. And if you thought all this wasn't enough, a bit more to review, as I couldn't leave you hanging without checking out the hoist with rescue hook. I will showcase this more in part 2, but wanted to at least give you an idea of how it looks, using Glenda here with some gear made specifically to be used with this hook. You pull down on it to extend the cord, but use a mechanism on the hoist itself to roll it back up. It does go down way more than this, but since the stand is in fact large enough to accommodate using it, you can actually display the Dragonfly hoisting someone up. Even when not using this specific gear, just hitch on the hook to any loose piece of gear on a figure and it can be used just fine. And like all original classic vehicles, we have the foot pegs. When I first got this, I struggled to see how it could be used realistically, but ultimately I found some creative ways to make this look good, one of which is here and more of which will come in part 2 when we review the figures. And how does it all come together live? Well, you can rotate the rotor blades to give it some flying action. You can also move the front nose cannon in all directions. The cannon pod moves up and down, and these back orange blades rotate together in 360 degrees. Each of these back wings can move independently from each other to give you a bunch of different configurations. And the switch found at the top lights up all the different control panels and spotlights. How does the HasLab GI Joe classified Dragonfly stack up to all the other awesome classified releases? My favorite comparison has to be this one, now that we're starting to get that classic lineup of vehicles. But let's take a closer look at how they scale with all the other vehicles to date, starting with the baseline Joe Ram motorcycle. Then moving on to the Cobra flight pod, followed by the Cobra Ferret, and the Cobra HMS, and finally the Vamp itself. But what I think you really want to see is how it looks next to the HasLab HISS Tank, and to be honest, I'm still surprised at how huge this HISS looks in general, but also next to the Dragonfly. Ultimately, they're generally the same size and have completely different designs. They also generally have the same features like lights and light up cockpits, though I'd say the HISS has a few more. When you place them in a more dynamic pose and from a side view, that's where you really see how they all come together in scale, and it does not disappoint. Having these two HasLabs together is a sight to behold, and knowing that a third is on the way in the form of the Cobra Rattler totally adds to the excitement. But let's end with this. As GI Joe went on, the vehicles got crazier and more sci-fi, so it's nice at this stage to have what I consider to be the three main iconic original Joe vehicles together in this shot. They just look so good together and brings you back to those fun, carefree days when these toys meant everything. Now we get to the good stuff, action shots using a bunch of our classified lineup, starting with one of my favorite builds using some of the members of the Cobra 788 fire team, with one of my all-time favorite Cobra vehicles ever, the Cobra Stinger. I just love the idea of the Dragonfly pinning down some Cobras with all of their vehicles and lasers trained on the Dragonfly. But this is Wild Bill we're talking about here, and if anyone can take on this amount of snakes, it's him and his assault copter. Always fun to throw in some Crimson Twins on the ferrets as well, and why not bring in Raptor too? Though pulling in the Cobra HISS Tank could mean trouble for good old Wild Bill, so better hightail it out of there until some backup comes. And speaking of Raptor, one of those Cobra characters I loved as a kid. I had to pull him in as a Cobra aerial specialist to take on Wild Bill and the Dragonfly in the sky. Great display idea for most, I'd say, if you want one with a bit of action and are tight on space, since all you have to do is have Raptor digging into the cockpit with his claws as he tears away at the metal to bring down the Joes. You can tell I had a bit of fun with this one. I mean, if you're going to have an accountant dressed as a large bird with mechanical wings, then may as well use him in the craziest way possible. Wild Bill finally has some support against that hiss, or is it more that the Joes finally have some air support themselves? This is a good display idea without so much going on like before, but still incorporating a ton of action. There's some really creative ways you can use vehicles to hide the more obvious parts of the stands to get a realistic looking display. I love the way that missile effect looks with the Dragonfly flying downwards towards its target. You can see how I set it up with the stands a bit better from this angle. My other favorite display idea is of course having the Joes just hanging out in the pit. As more and more baseline Joe vehicles are released, these displays are looking better than ever. I kinda like using this lot of Joes as they to me represent the original look and feel of GI Joe, and I finally got to pull in Mutt in one of these episodes as well, who is one of those figures I didn't have as a kid, but always thought was so cool. In part 2 of this review, I will be putting out the Night Force team, so keep an eye out for that. Which display ideas are your favorite? Let me know some of yours in the comments section. Not the most exciting to start with, but as someone who collects the packaging, I do also enjoy collecting the boxes these toys come in. So this box is staying in our collection with the actual toy packaging to be tucked away inside. Thought I'd start with the top of the box because essentially it corresponds to the cover of a book. The Dragonfly XH-1 Copter with some nice artwork including the Dragonfly logo, Wild Bill's logo, and the image of the Copter from different angles all up against a nice blue background. But the amazing art is really found on all the side panels, and if this image doesn't make you want to go track down an armada of dragonflies, I don't know what will. Every panel has something different and quite beautiful, to be honest. These images remind me of the old Vietnam movies with the helicopters flying in over the jungle. A perfect image that entirely works with the Dragonfly and Wild Bill character. Whoever drew these pictures deserves a raise. The Dragonfly has never looked so good. And if you pay close enough attention, you can see how the artist incorporated some of the bonus stickers the Copter comes with. Just makes me wish I had more than one to decorate them in different ways. I love this bottom panel as well because it reminds me of the old boxes that described all the features of the toy. It also came in real handy in this episode as a reference for all the names of the missiles, rockets, and grenade launchers. Glad I checked before starting to record. Finally, you get a nice little instruction booklet for assembling the Dragonfly, which also highlights all of the great features of this toy. You know what I would have loved though? An old school booklet that contains all the toys released to date, or at least the recent ones, just like the originals did. Pouring through that was always my favorite. So that's it. This was a big one. I hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you back here for part 2 when it comes out. In the meantime, lots of other toys to review as the new slew of 2025 GI Joe and Transformers figures start to roll in little by little. See you all next time, and remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Dragon!